recording. I am recording. All right. All right. Hi, I am Matt. I'm with otherpeoplesmovies.com, and today we are going to be talking about the movies of David Fincher. I'm going to be ranking them, and Luke's going to be commenting on them along with me, and we're going to have a good time doing it. So we're going to dig right in. I've been a huge David Fincher fan, like many people out there. He's not an uncelebrated filmmaker by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's one of the best directors ever. I've been a longtime fan of his. I'll get into which movies of his I started liking him at, like the most. We'll go into that later, but pretty much throughout his entire filmography, with one exception or two, which out of 12 movies isn't bad. Maybe two exceptions where I think maybe he didn't do great. But that being said, I think David Fincher is a master craftsman, and he's got
Yeah.
auteurist sensibilities. I don't know if he's an auteur because he's definitely a filmmaker for hire, and he works within the studio system and he doesn't write his own scripts. But at the same time, there are certain movies of his and certain moments in movies of his that could belong to no one else. So I think he is a master craftsman with auteurist sensibilities. I would rank him somewhere between Ridley Scott and Stanley Kubrick. He's somewhere between those two guys, and
Hmm.
in terms of what his career is and what he's accomplished. And I can't say enough good things about him, and I'm excited to dive into his movies here shortly. And what's your relationship with Fincher, Luke?
Oh yeah, I feel very much the same way. He is, without a doubt, in my opinion. I I, uh, I think he is in some ways a more masterful filmmaker than Kubrick was because he
Wow.
accomplished. I mean, Kubrick. He is among my top three.
Okay. Kubrick or
Kubrick,
Fincher?
both of them
Okay.
are actually among my top three because
Oh, wow.
I mean, if you think about how many takes Kubrick had to get to accomplish the same thing, uh, and yet Fincher's films have a more forensic feel. That with every single film, he approaches them with just supreme attention to detail,
Yeah.
and it feels like none of his films feel like they're mistakes,
Yeah.
in my opinion. I mean, even his most contentious films, like Alien 3, in my opinion, are still better than most of the other films of their kind.
Gotcha.
And
Well,
um, uh, the the only film of his that I have a hard time watching over and over is Panic Room because I just don't like the characters very
right,
much.
right, right, right.
But pretty much every single one of his other films. I mean, another film like that is like if for me, if I like the characters, I'll watch them over and over and over.
Sure, sure,
In a
sure,
regard,
sure.
but if and then at the next most important criteria for me criterion is uh how enjoyable the film itself is, the
Sure,
narrative.
sure.
So characters, the narrative, and how interesting it is to watch, the action that it follows in that cadence. And if it at his movies, for the most part, they they satisfy all those different categories pretty well for me personally.
Okay, okay. Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into ranking them. And you already brought up the one that is going to be my lowest rated. This is the only movie of his that I would consider. I don't think I hold it in as high esteem as you seem to, which is Alien 3. I don't like the movie at all very
Hmm.
much.
Hmm.
As a David Fincher film, as any film, I think it's the weakest film in the franchise, excluding the Aliens versus Predator movies, excluding those pieces of crap, which do have some minor entertainment value, but
Yeah.
that's another podcast.
Hmm.
But Alien 3, man, it's just an ugly for the sake of being ugly movie, and it just I don't. I've tried to like it many times over the years. Yes, it's got some craftsmanship to it. Yes, it on a technical level, it's not poorly made. It's definitely got some talent behind it. And I think it's a horrible sequel. I think it's a horrible sequel to two great movies, and I think it's not only a horrible sequel in just not being as good of a movie as those two movies. I think it's a
Hmm.
horrible sequel because it disrespects those two movies. It just kills characters left and right that we grow to love. And I think Fincher, if he had any control over the movie at all, which that I from what I understand, he had no control over the movie. He was just a
Yeah.
hired gun. He was a 26, 27-year-old kid directing his first movie. And I just, if he had any control over the movie at all, it felt like he was trying to be nihilistic for the sake of being nihilistic. It just felt like he was trying to go for shock value. Let's not only kill Newt, let's show Ripley feel her up and cut open her body. You know, this little girl who we grew to love in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Let's just watch her be completely eviscerated, both literally
Yeah.
and figuratively. I don't like it for many reasons. I tried watching it a few years ago, just trying to maybe give it a fresh perspective. I even tried giving the extended cut up on the Blu-ray a chance. I just don't like it. And yeah, I've said my piece. What do you think?
So I I get that. I get that. It is not. It is the least Fincher of the Fincher movies because he had so little control over it, like you said.
Hmm.
And if he did have control over it, I don't know how it would have. I mean, I don't know how it would have improved because I haven't seen that version of the film.
It is an
Um,
improvement. It's not a director's cut. It's an extended cut that he had nothing
mhm,
to do with because I know he won't touch that movie or even talk about it with a
mhm.
10-foot pole. But yeah, I recommend giving it a shot sometime, especially since you seem to like the movie more. But yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and I might have even seen it, but it's been a long time. I I like the prison planet. I like the I mean it broke one of the cardinal sins of or committed one of the cardinal sins of cinema, which is you never kill a dog. And it killed that poor dog and turned it into a xenomorph,
Yeah,
which for a horror film is, I mean, it was shocking.
yeah,
Um, it and at the same time, I mean, that world was felt so alien. In my opinion, it fit in. I mean, that they were defenseless. So
yeah.
that's that there were no weapons on the planet. They were they were they just got in the way. They got in the way of the alien, and then they got in the way of the the corporate representatives from
Waylon,
the film. I don't remember their names,
Waylon.
but yeah, Will and Utani. So like uh, they are. Sorry, my cat wants some attention. They are they the alien itself was very familiar, and that was really, and Sigourney Weaver was familiar. So to have those two elements really were the only things about it that made it an alien movie. So uh, uh, but they in my opinion they did it pretty well because they they brought it into a new environment, and it wasn't as heavily influenced by the what's his name, the name of the illustrator
Oh,
who,
H.R. Geiger.
what was it?
H.R. Geiger.
Yeah, so yeah, H.R. Geiger. So he is it Giger or Geiger?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, so let's A Geiger.
I
He
think it's Geiger.
the it's so the that world was so well imagined, with how the technology and body horror, you know, were kind of mixed, and you saw that really well developed in Alien, and that really well developed in Aliens,
Yeah.
and Fincher did something different with it, and I don't think it was bad. I mean,
Okay.
the whole prison planet a that
Okay.
had been a forgery, right? Or not a forgery. What is it when they a foundry?
Hmm.
They created their own steel or pig
Yeah.
iron or whatever. I think it was, that kind of it had a kind of cosmic horror element
Gotcha.
uh, that was kind of absent in the first two films, because it seemed like the spaces were so huge,
Gotcha.
which were kind of reminiscent of space itself,
Okay.
and um, the whereas aboard the ship, I was very cramped, and aboard the in Aliens, aboard the space colony, it was very cramped.
Okay.
Tight corridors, so it felt like you didn't have a lot of room to escape. There were some tight corners, and when they were trying to corral
Yeah.
the alien, the xenomorph. So, but for the most part, it felt really, really open
Okay.
to me,
Okay.
much more open,
Very
because
cool.
because the the way that foundries have to have so much room for air to escape,
Yeah.
so that the men didn't get burned as they were working.
Right.
I thought that was interesting,
Great.
but I definitely understand why most people hate that movie.
Okay. Okay. Well,
A-
I
Again, I think that with all of Fincher's movies, again and again, I'm just going to be how the forensic attention to detail, the forensic application of narrative and character design. I think that's just something that if I don't mention it, it'll be on my mind
okay. Well,
as we're talking about
I'm
these.
glad you see something in that movie that I
Yeah.
don't. I'm glad you do. My next least favorite movie, and this is from here on in, the next 11 movies I consider all to be good, good to
Okay.
great.
Cool.
Some of them are
Yeah.
masterpieces. Some of them are
Yeah.
outright masterpieces. But from
Absolutely.
here on in, they're all good. Uh, but my least favorite of these movies that I would call actual David Fincher films, and this one's going to probably be a little bit of a surprise. Social Network.
Yeah.
I think it's one. It's got some wonderful writing by Aaron Sorkin. I mean, it's two masters, David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin. I mean, it's wonderfully written.
Yeah.
Long story short, I'm just going to condense my feelings about this movie. My main complaint is that it just does. I wanted a movie that captured Facebook and how it hit that generation that was growing up with it. I wanted a movie that really defined it, that really explored it, and this was not that movie. It was more about politics and legalities and broken friendships, and it was interesting when you take it for what it is. And my other main complaint is that when you're making a movie about living figures who are still prominent in the public eye, try to be more accurate about it,
Yeah.
because they took some severe liberties, and I usually try not to let that affect my opinion of a movie or my enjoyment of a movie, but this did affect my opinion of The Social Network. Why I don't consider it a great movie is it's somewhat of a tabloid piece, it's somewhat of a smear piece. They completely misrepresent Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm not trying to sound like a sympathizer for him, but they put words in his mouth. They had him do things that he never did that really would have defined his character. And when you make a movie that's designed for popular use, to be seen by so many people, be more responsible to who you're representing. And I think that the movie is a little irresponsible in that
Yeah.
regard. Uh, in that, I've said my piece. How do you feel, Luke?
Yeah, I agree with when this for in many ways this was the Citizen Kane of this was the Citizen Kane touch on Facebook. In the same way that Orson Welles made a commentary film on, well, we both have seen Mank, so we know
Sure,
what that's all about.
sure.
Uh, it was a commentary on Hearst, who was alive at the time
Right.
and who had strong feelings about the film. The we don't I don't know if Zuckerberg has had a reaction. Did Zuckerberg say anything about Social Network?
I don't think he had to. There's just been a lot of. I don't think he did. I mean, he showed up.
Yeah,
He seemed to. He took it in stride. He didn't come out and complain about it or anything.
yeah.
I've just read about the liberties it
Really.
took. The artistic. Sure. I've just read about the artistic liberties it took. And I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like
yeah,
that they had him creating a website where you rate girls on whether or not they're ugly, and that's actually completely fabricated. That bothers me. Yeah, yeah.
it
But yeah, I mean, the Citizen Kane reference, I get it. I get it.
yeah. He I think that
Certainly a
uh
well-made movie, Luke. It's certainly a well-made movie.
yeah, it's not as great of a movie in the same way. That's not what I was saying.
Oh
It,
no, no, no.
it
I know, I know,
yeah,
I know
yeah.
what you're saying. Yes.
It's really just sort of a social commentary on a person who's still alive that's kind of contentious and took a lot of liberties with the actual story.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that yes. Um
I wish they
it
had
is
fictionalized it the way that Citizen Kane did.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. If they had that would have been more
Wait,
apropos, I
did
think.
Citizen Kane fictionalize the character, or did they actually name him Hearst?
No, it was definitely fictionalized.
Okay, okay,
There
okay,
was no
okay. I knew that. I knew that. I just
yeah.
was second guessing myself. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I was starting
Um,
to. What was his name in the movie?
uh, Kane. What was
Right,
his
right,
name? It
right,
was
right, right.
um uh I
I
don't
don't
remember
remember.
the character's name.
I'm a poor
Part
film
of his last
student,
name's
Luke.
Kane.
I'm a poor film student.
Me too. It's I mean these are topics that we had often conversed about a long time ago, and then that we've seen so many other films since, and just our thoughts
Right,
upon those movies
right,
aren't as fresh.
right, right, right. But no, no, I get the comparison you're making, and I wish they had taken the Citizen Kane route and fictionalized it. And uh, I think I would have liked the movie a lot more had they done that.
Yeah,
No,
I don't disagree.
yeah,
I uh especially if we had seen to we only saw Jesse Eisenberg's portrayal of just kind of uh, a very socially belabored young man who it seems just was constantly acting and reacting to situations, and creating a world just from pure bitterness. And I don't think that's what uh, I think that Zuck, for all of his foibles, I think there was a part of him that was actually trying to create something that the
yeah.
world needed. That and that's certainly how it was sold. But
I'm not
uh,
researched enough to about Mark
yeah,
Zuckerberg to comment too much to give too much of an insightful comment about
yeah,
who he is as a person. I just know what I know and what I've read about the movie being
yeah,
fabricated in many ways.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
The I think that originally it started off as something kind of cool, and then it just became the worst possible version of itself.
yeah, yeah. All right. Moving on to number 10. This is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. The
Yeah,
Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
yeah,
Good movie. Really well
yeah,
made. It's the best
yeah.
movie Robert Zemeckis never directed. You know, it's it. it's the least Fincher of all the Fincher movies, including
Mhm.
Alien 3. I mean, Alien 3 has more feelings of what I would call Fincher feelings than
Yeah,
the curious basic case of Benjamin Button. Cool for him. Cool for him to step outside of his comfort zone. It's a cool movie.
yeah,
It's a good movie. It's a cool movie. I just
yeah,
have no desire to ever see it
yeah,
again.
yeah.
So
What's there is the forensic application of narrative
yeah,
that that he is so good at. There, and by forensic application, I think one of the best ways that you can figure out what I mean by that is to try to think of the different plot holes that are in the movie that are not resolved, and he just doesn't have that many.
yeah,
People complain about plot holes and how that really holds up the enjoyment of a film. His films, pretty much for the most part, as far as I know, they lack plot holes. They're just
yeah,
really, really well crafted narratives,
yeah.
and um, and that is so important with a visual narrative when um, people are creating a shared story that people will take and use as a for pop culture references later on, shared understanding of how the world works. I mean, Roger Ebert basically said that the value of film is how we understand the other.
Agree. It's a
And
machine that generates empathy.
yeah, exactly. So I
That's
mean,
his quote. Yep.
he so how would we relate to a person who aged backwards? That's what that film addressed perfectly.
Mhm.
And he was othered so much from the very beginning that of course his wealthy father, who could have made his life very easy, abandoned him, very early, the day he was born, at the doorstep of a black family, who
Mhm.
and black people in the United States are constantly being othered, and even when they have risen to the level of acceptance, they still are being othered. Chris
Yeah.
Rock famously said at the Academy Awards, "I'm rich, and none of you would want to be me. None
Yeah.
of you would. None of you would want to trade places with me, and I'm rich," which says so much
Sure. Sure.
about how how damaging othering is.
Yeah.
When we don't take the time to develop empathy about strangers and about and I mean, how can when you have
So do you
such a
feel this movie
limited
did those
worldview?
things that you're talking about? Do you feel
Oh
like
yeah, I think that in it it is the most twee of David Fincher's films.
okay.
He usually avoids sweetness and um uh most of his movies are they 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 seek the darkness in our souls and kind of try to ferment
Right.
that that spirit.
Yeah.
And the case of Benjamin Button is almost completely lacking in it.
Sure.
With the only exception would be the romantic relationship he had with women and how kind of he was dishonest with them about the nature of his
Sure.
reality.
Sure.
And the only person he could be honest about it with was the young girl who he developed a relationship when he looked like an old man and she looked like a little girl. They were the same age,
Right.
same level of innocence, but because of how he looked, they couldn't be together.
Right.
And then they went the middle of their lives in their 40s. They could briefly, or maybe it was really their late 30s, they could briefly be together and enjoy life together. And then he had to abandon her,
Yeah.
and because the world wouldn't understand their relationship as he continued to look younger as he got older.
Right. Right.
It in many ways that would be the exact same thing as um, a mixed couple in the pre-Civil War, pre-Civil Rights era, you know, where it was illegal to for black people to marry white people. Um, it the I don't remember the name of the first quote unquote mixed race couple that got married and enjoyed protection of the civil rights laws, but that that couple existed. They are their names are written in history, and
Okay.
if we so desired, we could look their names up right now and we could celebrate them. But for better or worse, that that isn't. Given the amount of time we have right now, we
Yeah.
can't do that.
Well, I think you see a lot in the movie that I wrote that movie off as being kind of Fincher fluff, and
Yeah.
you see a lot more value in it than I do, and I appreciate and
Well,
respect that. So
I think I've seen him more recently, and
okay,
also when
I
you
saw it within the last 3 or 4 years.
okay,
I've seen it probably 2 or 3 times. Um,
I when I first saw it, I was coming off of uh, Fight Club and Seven, and
mhm.
movies that really spoke to the anger that I had as a young man. And
Sure,
so I wasn't ready for a really sweet film
exactly,
about
exactly.
a young man who could not possibly uh, understand the world that refused to understand him.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. All right. And now, oh, and by the way, while you were talking, I looked up. They named Orson Welles Citizen on IMDb. The name of Orson Welles' character in Citizen Kane is Kane.
Yeah, this game.
I don't know
Yeah,
what his first name is. I
yeah.
wish I feel like I feel like an idiot for not knowing it on this
There is a
podcast.
man. Another man. I don't remember. I think in that I don't know. Yeah, it just came. Kane
Okay,
is all.
so but back on track. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I
No,
had
no,
to.
no,
I
no
hate that
worries.
I didn't know that. I hate that I didn't know that. All right, number 9, Panic Room. Uh, Good movie, very well
Yeah,
done. Not it's not great. It's like you said earlier. Its characters are pretty forgettable. It's got a tight story and an interesting premise. David Koepp is the screenwriter, and he's a master. I wouldn't say this is one of his better movies, and I wouldn't say it's one of Fincher's better movies, but I have very little to say about it. I love Jodie Foster. I'll always love Jodie Foster.
yeah,
She can make even the most underwritten character interesting. So, and I think she does that. There's not much to these characters, and she brings in a really she brings in a history and a weight to her character that wouldn't be there with a lesser actress. So,
yeah.
it's a solid thriller movie. I think
It is.
Fincher's talents. I think Fincher should aim higher. I think it's just like, dude, you're better than this. You can make masterpieces for the rest of your career. Don't
Yeah,
settle on just making a perfectly good B movie, which you did. But that's and it's another thing I like about it is it really utilized digital technology. It's really he's
yeah,
having fun utilizing digital technology with this movie,
yeah,
and stuff that he had pioneered with his and that he had helped pioneer with some of his earlier movies. But I know you probably like it less than I do, and I'm okay with it. I like it. It's
yeah.
again we're talking about good movies here, but I think he can aim higher.
I don't disagree. It is so with all of Fincher's films, the mise en scène, what appears on the screen is so. I know that you know what mise en scène means, but uh, what appears on the screen is exactly there because he wants it to be there. You
Hmm.
know, there may be in other movies there may be things that appear that just accidentally slipped in, but I don't feel like that ever happens with a Fincher film, and I could be
Right.
wrong. But for some reason it I don't. I just don't feel it like that. I just don't get that impression from his movies. With Panic Room, the sets were so bare. The only escape we had was the characters themselves. Because Jodie Foster and Kristen Stewart's character, they had moved into that house. They had just moved into that house, and so um, when Lawrence Fishburne's character, and was Lawrence Fishburne, I have it wrong. No, what's the name of that actor? Is it Lawrence? It's not Lawrence Fishburne, right? It's the
Forrest
main
Whitaker.
actor.
Forrest Whitaker.
Forrest Whitaker. Yeah, shit. Okay, so Forrest Whitaker's character, and then Jared Leto, and the third one is Dwight Yoakam.
I believe so.
So
Yeah.
so those three characters, Dwight Yoakam's character actually kind of is sort of redeemed at the end of the movie. He I remember him kind of being the nice, the unexpected nice guy out of the three. I remember the Forrest Whitaker's character is actually the one that that be, tries to murder them, right? And Dwight Yoakam's like, no, we don't want to do that. That's a bad idea. And I don't see. I only watched it I think one time, and the characters are so unlikable that I just wasn't able to get through it again.
Okay.
But Forrest Whitaker, I mean, he is one of my favorite. I mean, he's one of I've liked him in so many of his other films. In Ghost Dog, he was so good in that.
Mm-hmm.
But and he was so great in in Species, the empath, who could just like touch a surface and like know exactly what the person was experiencing, whatever. Do you remember that? It doesn't matter. He really just interesting characters, and he, he was just, his portrayal of the main villain was so good. I for some reason I wanted to escape from it, and the only way I could escape from that movie was by not watching it.
Yeah.
And so I after watching it for the first time in the theater, I just haven't watched it again.
Yeah.
And I tried recently to prepare for this, and I was just like, no, I don't. Why am I doing this to myself? I don't like these characters
So
well
this
enough.
is your least favorite David Fincher
Oh,
film.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It is as Fincher-esque as it is. It is the only one that I really don't like well enough to watch.
Okay.
Rewatch.
Okay. Interesting. That's fair. And from here, okay, there's one more that I would not classify. Well, there's a couple more yet that I wouldn't classify quite as great. Number 8, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I probably would rank it higher if it weren't a remake that didn't need to exist. The
Yeah,
Swedish
exactly.
versions with Numi Rapace were great. I love those.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing it interpreted through Fincher and oh gosh, I'm blanking on Joaquin Phoenix's wife. Who's the girl? Who's the main girl in
It,
this?
yeah, her name is it's an interesting movie. She's Kate Mara's sister.
Rooney
Something.
Mara. Rooney Mara.
Yeah, Rooney Mara.
Rooney Mara.
Yeah,
Something like that.
yeah,
Rooney Mara.
something like
Yeah,
that.
she did a great job. It's a great movie.
Yeah,
Daniel Craig's great in it. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it. It just, I wish David Fincher hadn't done a remake.
yeah,
I kind of wish it's another one that's just kind of like, I'm sure you got paid well, dude, but you're better than this.
yeah.
That being said, he did make the most of it, and he made a pretty cool movie. I mean,
It's
it's a long
yeah,
movie. It's a long movie. But he has
yeah,
fun with it. It never feels like it drags. It just I wish he could have made more of them, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad that he only made one of them and didn't waste too much time making a bunch of them.
yeah,
Again, they were the versions with Numi Rapace were already done. Those are perfectly fine movies. Don't remake them. But
yeah,
again, well done, good movie. I wish he had aimed higher.
yeah. I don't disagree with that. He, I think that insofar as that, he brings that forensic attention to detail. He is so good at what he does, but at the same time, like you said, it's already been done. The only thing I could say that he chose different narrative moments from the story, to arrive at more or less the same place.
Hmm.
So it wasn't a shot for shot remake of the girl with the dragon
No,
tattoo.
no, no, no,
It,
no, not at
it,
all.
it was but it was uh, a narrative reinterpretation of it, and I agree that it didn't need to be remade.
Yeah,
But uh, I mean, I think that when you for me it's I could watch it again because the
yeah, I could
way
too. I
style,
will watch it again. I like it.
yeah, yeah, because his style is on full display. He is so much uh, better in that. I think that he has gotten better as a filmmaker over the years.
He
You know,
his use his somewhat ironic use of Enya is some of the best use and I've heard some good use of Enya in movies.
uh-huh.
She's very cinematic, but his use of Enya uh, was pretty great.
what, remind me, where was it that this is
Sail
the
away at the end when I don't want to give it, well, people have seen the movies, when the
yeah.
killers got him and she comes in and saves him with the golf clubs, and
Oh yeah.
sail away is playing. It's just,
And then,
and he's choking to death, and he's
yeah,
got the bag on his head.
yeah, and then she asks for permission to kill him.
Yes,
I,
yes,
I thought that was great.
yeah, yeah. It's a cool
um,
movie.
it is a very, yeah, it's cool. I love her revenge on her rapist. Um,
Yes,
I love I when one of my favorite
it's
genres
Rooney
is,
Mara. It's Rooney Mara.
yeah, Rooney Mara.
Yeah.
So I really like revenge fantasy films uh because we need that catharsis,
Sure.
against villains. And if we don't have, if we suffer too long in the space of a victim, that can be traumatic for people.
Hmm.
We're eventually gonna get to seven, and I I that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Uh, yeah, yeah. It's a cool movie. I just, like I
Yeah,
said,
that's
I
cool.
wish he had aimed higher. All right, moving on. Number seven, The Killer. Again, really cool movie. I
Yeah,
just this is the one that I really wanted to make sure I rewatched for this podcast because I had seen it a
yeah,
couple times when it first came out, and I had a hard time forming an opinion of it the first time. Because I did write a review of it for the website, and I think I gave it. I think after seeing it once or twice, I gave it a B plus. I've now seen it, let's say, a total of three times. I might tip it up to an A minus.
hmm,
It's part of my issue with it is that it succeeds at what it wants to do. And I part of my issue with that is that I'm not entirely, I get what it's trying to do, and there's a little bit of overkill there.
yeah,
It communicates the redundancy and the boredom. He brings up boredom very early on in the movie of being a hitman. And
yeah,
the movie communicates that the mundane aspects of it very, very well. It makes it
yeah,
feel all the more real. And it's not exactly a thrilling movie, but it has its moments for certain. Like it has
yeah,
one of the best hand-to-hand fight scenes I've ever seen. Like that
yeah,
scene that had the scene in the house where the guy's throwing him into the TV. Amazing fight scene.
yeah, yes,
Um, but it's a very cerebral movie. It's a very
yeah,
it's a character study of a sociopath.
yeah,
And I admire it. I don't love it, and part of the reason I don't love it is because it's good at what it's trying to do. It's trying to put me in this cold, emotionless mindset.
yeah. It Becky and I watched it together. My wife Rebecca and I, we watched the movie together, and I didn't realize that she was watching it at first. I thought she was doing something on her phone, but it I was going to turn it off when I realized that she was watching it with me. I was going to turn it off for her, because I thought that she was bored, because the beginning of the movie, it's just so slow, and I thought for sure that because she's although Rebecca, she loves movies, she doesn't I didn't think that she liked them in the same way that I do. So I didn't think that she would have been as captivated by it. And the fact that she was captivated early on in the film, despite its slow pace, can only be credited to Fincher's style as a filmmaker.
And that those opening moments are very important. If you're not on
Yeah,
board with those opening moments, walk out of
yeah,
the movie right then, because it's
yeah,
not going to get any better. I remember thinking the first time I watched that opening sequence with that never-ending monologue of Michael Fassbender's, that hypnotic never-ending monologue, and I remember thinking, man, this is just, what are they doing? I mean, Fincher's got to have a Fincher and Andrew Kevin Walker, the screenwriter, who's a great screenwriter. They've got to have some kind of purpose for this, but they do. It's
yeah,
all, again, it's all about setting the stage for the boredom and the redundancies of being a hitman, of the
yeah,
everyday reality of being a hitman. And I actually I appreciated what it was doing, especially with multiple viewings. Um, but again, that particular sequence sucks me in. It You basing an entire 2 hour movie kind of stylistically off that opening, and that's kind of the way a map of where the movie's headed for the rest of for the remaining 2 hours. It gets a little tiresome for me. Uh,
yeah,
but again, I'm just all I'm saying is why I find it to be very good instead of great.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, the voiceover narration is a uh, is a tool that should rarely be used
yeah,
in filmmaking. And if you do use it, you better have a really good reason for it. And I think the reason why the film had voiceover narration is uh, to was to slow it down. It was to just you because you're in the head of this alien, this person who does not belong in society. Uh, so in that sense, that uh, they have othered themselves, by playing into their worst characteristics as a sociopath and becoming a hitman, and profiting off of that lack of ethical decision making, that lack of ethical capacity. uh, uh, he othered himself.
hmm
He by choosing to look like a German tourist, he by choosing to become as invisible as possible um, to be get to accumulate a life of comfort off of the misery of others, whether or not those people deserved to be assassinated is a different story. That those people have lives, and they have people who care about them, and to have them ripped from their own lives, you have to think about how those narratives continue to take shape after he's interacted with them. And um, so the assassin is a purposefully uh, uh, an anti-hero, if not a villain, in almost every case. There's never going to be. There are very rarely hero assassins, you know, and because you don't want to normalize murder. So how do you do that? You if you're going to build a narrative off of a murderer, you have to uh, either get inside their head and really explain why they're doing what they're doing, or you have to, John Wick it, and it just completely make it about constant gratuitous violence.
Yeah.
And both of them have, I mean, uh, what's fast? Is it Michael Fassbender? Is that his?
Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, yeah. He is such a great actor,
Yeah.
but he he was not wasted in that movie for a second.
No.
I the but and that having been said, I mean, let's look at like Le Samurai, which is a French movie from the 60s about a professional killer
Right.
who
I've never
doesn't
seen
get
it.
away with it.
I've never
You've
seen
never
it.
seen it?
No, I've never seen it. I know. I need.
I
It's Mel.
highly
That's
recommend it.
Melville, right?
I think so. I think
Okay.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's it
I've never
it,
seen it.
it there is I don't I it's almost a silent film. There's very little dialogue in it.
Hmm.
There's I don't think there's any voiceover narration. It's just you're just seeing how this very purposeful criminal
Hmm.
goes through their life and tries to evade capture.
Gotcha.
And probably because of French laws at the time or societal norms or whatever, that he didn't get away with it. The police had to catch him.
Right.
So it wouldn't have been for uh, it, we like it for some reason when the bad guy gets away with it sometimes,
Sure.
and uh, and with Fassbender, he's extremely charismatic. So we ended up, liking his character,
Yeah.
and his perhaps the voiceover narration helped create that our helped foment our capacity for holding him in our hearts,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
No,
actually wanting
I
him to
think it's
succeed.
very similar to the voiceover narration which with Fight Club is that it's very much it defines the tone of the movie, it defines the tone of the
Yeah,
character, it gets you inside the character's head and it endears you to
yeah,
him. So yeah,
yeah,
very cool. Very cool. All right,
yeah,
moving on to number six. And this is and from here on I think this is one great movie after another. So he's made. I mean, it's all the remaining six. We're halfway through.
yeah.
Great movie. These are all great movies. They're hard to rank. This one was pretty easy to put at the bottom of what I would call the six great movies because it's not one I'm gonna rewatch. Like the remaining five, I could watch. I do watch multiple times throughout, not multiple times a year, but I watch at least once every couple years. But this one, I'm probably not going to be watching a month, and that's Mank. I've seen it a few times. I admire it. It's an A movie. It was one of the best
Yeah.
movies of its year. I think it's written by David Fincher's father. It's got a cool backstory to it.
Yeah.
I know it's not entirely accurate. I know Mank is a little more left leaning in the movie and a little more left sympathizing in the movie than he was in reality. I did a little bit of reading. I have a friend who really hates this movie because she considers it to be really inaccurate. Uh, that I just think it's a solid movie. I think it's beautifully
It
shot.
is.
I think it's got a lot to say. Whether it's forcing history to make some points, it probably is for dramatic purposes.
Yeah.
But whatever. I think it's a great movie. Gary Oldman, wonderful.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
yeah, I can't I just really enjoy it and I'm not gonna rewatch it over and over again. I'll probably watch it maybe a few more times in my lifetime, but it's one of those movies that you've seen it once or twice, you kind of get what it is. It's not necessarily a repeat viewing movie, but not all movies have to be. But anyway, it's a great movie. What are your thoughts, Luke?
I totally agree. It is a brilliant film about a one of the greatest films of all time.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And but it's not just about Citizen Kane.
No,
It's
no.
about the filmmakers that made it,
Yeah.
and
It's about the politics of the day. It's about yeah.
yeah, and they're, I mean, it in the same way that, um, in the same way that, uh, what was how to oh no, it's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Tarantino's movie was sort of uh, a a fictionalized documentary style. No, not documentary style, but you know what I mean. It had it wanted to show us what filmmaking was like in the '60s,
Yeah.
and I'm losing my train of thought here, so I gotta play with my fidget. So like but in that same way, uh, uh, Mank was about making movies in the 30s, 30s and
Yeah.
40s, and so it was really neat to see how screenwriters used to do it back in the day.
Yeah.
How they really would uh, crank it out by committee, crank because they didn't want to have they studio executives even back then were worried about profits more than anything, and so they wanted to make sure that they had hits. So they would hire a whole bunch of brilliant writers who would just find the craziest ways ever
Yeah.
to write movies. And so like yes, absolutely. There were naked women in, naked stenographers back then because it was a sexist boys club, and uh, and I'm glad that it's not like that anymore. But in some ways, it probably is exactly still like that.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I know that I mean Harvey Weinstein didn't get to be the most vilified um, person in Hollywood today for no reason.
Right.
He uh, that kind of approach to filmmaking was um, was kind of glorified and romanticized, and Mank approached that telling that story, but at the same time he was it was about the dangers of being blacklisted, the communist witch hunts, and it was such an interesting movie that I mean I didn't want to rewatch it again I because I wanted it to stay fresh. Let's say I should have rewatched it again, but I didn't, and I should have rewatched it because there are so many details
Yeah.
that might have gone missed,
Yeah.
but and yet it stays fresh in my mind because Gary Oldman, he's such a great actor. I kind of just I I don't really remember his lines, but I remember his facial the the gestures that he made, his facial mannerisms. I and he his triumphs and his disappointments were on full display in that movie, and
Yeah.
it was fantastic.
Yeah. Very much
Yeah,
so. Very much so.
he is a great. That I think that Fincher and Gary Oldman working together, one of the best pairings in film history. I hope
Nice.
that they work together more often.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Well said. All right, moving on to number five. I love this movie, and this is a movie that I've actually heard David Fincher say he regrets making. Uh, uh, I don't understand why, because I think it's great. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief you have to put into it, but it's it's a ridiculous concept, but it's great, and that's the game. I
Oh,
love this movie. I think it's a great movie. I think it's
yeah,
one of Michael Douglas's best
yeah,
movies. I think they make a ridiculous premise. I think Fincher did a wonderful job of making a ridiculous and unrealistic premise tangible.
yeah,
You buy it in the end, and I think he's being too hard on the movie when he says it falls apart in the last act. Because I bought it. I've always bought it, and I've seen the
uh-huh,
movie probably a dozen times. I just think it's a fantastic, twisty, wonderfully moving character piece,
yeah,
thriller, just it's on many different levels. It's a success, and I think it's a great movie. And
I
if he's that nitpicky about his career that he would regret a great movie like this, then whatever, man. But I think it's a pretty great movie.
I agree. I watched it many times. It was on cable. I think it was on HBO. And I just every time it was on, I watched it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I think it's a great movie. It is so thrilling, and even from the very beginning, when he's when he's taking the tests, and you find that he finds the oh he finds um the video camera in the clown, very early in the movie, and then he comes back, or no, he wake up, and he finds that his home has been vandalized, and it looks kind of like Joker's crew has gone through it,
Right.
and you know vandalized those masterpieces, and priceless works of art destroyed, just just to entertain uh, a very silly billionaire.
Yeah.
I think that it's a great movie, and I think that what I don't like about it is that uh, it normalizes the overindulgences of the extremely wealthy, by
Oh,
turning.
I can see that. I can see that. I mean, yes, I'm gonna circle about. I think it's a movie about a man who needs emotional catharsis because of the loss of
Yeah.
his father. But the fact that they
Oh,
go through such expensive means and complex means to provide this white man with the catharsis he needs is a bit what you're saying. I can see what
yeah,
you're saying. So I please
yeah.
continue.
No, yeah, I don't disagree. This is a man who has a hard time uh, decompressing. He has a hard time uh, inventorying his emotions. But at the end of the day, uh, you know, it's he has this huge list of crap that he has to pay for, and it's itemized, and then you're like, they it should be illegal to do that. It should be illegal to destroy so much uh, just to entertain one person,
Right. Right.
uh,
Yeah.
to
Well said.
create so much waste,
Yeah.
and yet it is an extremely entertaining movie.
It really
You
is.
know,
And
it
that's,
really
I
is.
mean, you have to kind of, again, suspension of disbelief.
Yeah,
There's a lot of logic. It is a movie that has a lot of logic police to it, that the
yeah,
logic police can attack it easily for. So that may be the movie that you were saying earlier. There are probably some holes in the game, but that's
yeah,
it. Who cares? It's a movie. It I don't care watching that movie.
yeah,
I again suspension of disbelief.
yeah,
I'm buying it for what it is.
yeah.
And I think it does a good job of making it, if not feel realistic, it makes everything appear realistic. So
It's the yeah, it's the in that way it's the least forensic of Fincher's movies, but he it's so much fun you don't really care.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. All right, moving on to number 4. Masterpiece, the first movie that Fincher blew everybody away with, Seven.
yeah,
Oh man, I mean, what do you say about this movie? It's a wonderful, it's a twisty thriller with a grand theme that criticizes human corruption. It's a crazy movie.
it
It's
really
they
is.
got away. I mean, God bless Brad Pitt, because that movie would not have gotten away with the ending it has had it not for him intervening.
Yeah,
Had it not been for him, he was the powerful one who backed up Fincher wanting to move in the movie like that. So
Yeah.
we have Brad Pitt to thank for that. It's just it's a great thriller. It's I mean in itself was copying Blade Runner. Its style, but its style has been copied since then many times over. Uh, it's just a wonderful thriller, and it's a it hold. I've seen it in the last couple years, and it holds up to this day. How do you feel about it?
Uh, could you? I totally agree. Um, it is one of the most interesting movies that's ever been made.
Yeah,
It is. You, there's although what's his name, the star, not Brad Pitt,
Morgan Freeman,
uh, not Morgan Freeman,
Kevin
the
Spacey.
villain. Kevin Spacey has become like a Hollywood villain these days, but back then when we still thought great things about Kevin Spacey, you know he made he made two great movies back to back, The Usual Suspects and Seven, and he at the time he was such a captivating actor, and you really it was so he added something really great to the screen, and something undefinable
Yeah,
that I think it was it was an intelligence to villains that we really didn't have very that was kind of absent,
yeah, yeah,
in a lot of filmmaking.
yeah.
Um, uh,
He was an interesting, uh, you know, Anthony Hopkins had done it a few years earlier with Silence of the Lambs, but
yes, absolutely,
he was definitely in that league and in that
yeah,
category.
yeah. What before I even saw Seven, I went to school in Dallas for my undergrad, and I was in a bar, and I saw this guy who with his head in his hands like this, like and he was just like he was clearly disturbed, and it was like in a bar, and like people were comforting him, and like man, what's wrong? And he goes, I just saw Seven. It's the most disturbing thing I've ever seen. And this guy, his world was wrecked from a movie, And I was like, oh, I have to see this movie.
That's a great
I
story.
Yeah. So I was like I had to go see that movie after that. I was just like I hadn't really heard anything that much about it. I didn't ever watch TV commercials
Yeah,
because I don't think no, I did have cable. I don't remember. I don't remember why I didn't go see the movie earlier, but I didn't see it until I got home. You know why I didn't? Because I couldn't find anybody to go with me.
right.
I went home, and this girl said, "You want to go see this movie with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go see Seven." I was like, kind of disturbing that a girl wanted to see it, but
Yeah,
we missed the first few minutes of it, and so for years I didn't know how the movie opened up,
yeah,
but it is Kevin Spacey. One of his lines in the movie is, "What I've done will be studied," and
yeah,
and he's right. It's one of those movies
yeah.
that you like. You go through the set pieces and the production, what the production team brought to the table,
Mhm.
all those like hundreds of journals that each page was filled in, and Morgan Freeman just like randomly went through them
Yeah,
and found, I mean, so it was just so good.
yeah.
And
I
all the how I mean how all the different sins were portrayed. I thought like,
yeah.
man, this movie is something else. It's something
Great.
I yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. Yes, I can't agree with you more. Like I said, we're pretty much at one masterpiece after another here. And number
Yeah.
three, see the now we're at the three where it's like we're at his final three. I could have named any one of these three my favorite David Fincher movie. It's very hard for
Yeah.
me. I how I ranked these last three is the one that I watched the most. So we'll get into that. But I watch all three of these, if not every year, if not multiple times in a year, at least every other year.
Mhm.
So yes, and I just rewatched Zodiac, not for this podcast because I've seen it dozens of times before. I just rewatched it again because I wanted to. It's
Yeah,
that good of a freaking movie. I didn't do it for
yeah,
homework. I didn't do it because, and I knew we were doing this podcast. I was like, I want to watch Zodiac. It's just a, it's just a hypnotic emphasis on hypnotic. It's just every time I see it, it's almost 3 hour movie. It just goes by like it puts me in a trance and it just goes by evenly and it just sucks you
yeah,
in. But it's this wonderful, just enticing, tantalizing movie about an unsolvable mystery, and it sucks you
yeah.
into that unsolvable mystery, and it's so cool. It's just such, and
It really is.
its attention to history and its attention to detail is just, I know Fincher put so much of himself into it trying to actually solve this case while he was making the movie. And I just think that's what's so cool about it. And it's just,
Yeah,
it doesn't pretend to have all the answers, which I appreciate. It certainly tips the scale towards one prime suspect, which, being a reader of the case and somebody who's followed the case, I agree with. I don't have that big of a problem with it being biased in that regards because it takes its cue from the Robert Graysmith book. But it's just, I could go on. It's a great movie, and this is only my third favorite David Fincher movie. How am I going to gush about the other two? All right, how do you
yeah.
how do you feel about Zodiac, Luke?
Yeah, this goes to 11. So like, yeah, it is a great movie. Um, Zodiac, like you said, I mean the Zodiac killer. You know, he was never officially identified. Um, and I think that I think you're right. I think that the evidence they supplied for who that character who the Zodiac killer actually was, I think that it was
Might have been. We don't know who he
I
was.
we don't know exactly who it was, but the movie makes a pretty good case
Yes.
for one particular person. And I, like you said, I read that book just like you did,
Hmm.
or maybe I think you did.
Yes.
Yes. So we both read that book. We both agree that he was the most likely killer.
Yes.
Um,
Arthur Lee Allen. Yes.
Arthur. So I watched it again recently for this podcast, and man, the watching it was where I decided what I was trying to decide what that je ne sais quoi was that Fincher brought to his film style that he was so good at, that it was Zodiac specifically helped me. It uh, gave me the oh, forensic attention to detail. That's what it is. Fincher has a forensic attention to detail,
Yes.
and
Especially with this movie.
yeah, especially with Zodiac.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why
I think
it
that
could so easily be my number one.
yeah,
In anybody else's filmography, it would be my number one. So that's
hmm
just telling you how great these next two movies are. But yeah,
I,
I love Zodiac.
I totally agree. It's a great film. I
Yeah.
mean, it's uh, the my our mutual enjoyment of his films has pretty much been lockstep um, since Panic Room.
Yeah.
Like all the movies that you mentioned, pretty much for the most part, I agree with you lockstep with ranking and everything. And that's what makes Fincher my most favorite filmmaker is
Yeah.
that every single one of his movies. I said almost all of his movies are infinitely more watchable and enjoyable than the vast majority of films out there.
Yeah.
And although Kerouac made my that's not Kerouac uh, uh, oh shoot
I
um
don't know who you're trying to think of.
yeah no Clockwork Orange
Oh,
and
Kubrick. Kubrick.
Kubrick made some of my all-time most favorite films, being specifically my most all-time favorite film is 2001.
Sure.
So uh, and and his other, so many of his other films I've enjoyed as almost as much. He at the same time he the what I've learned about his filmmaking style since then has kind of lowered him a little bit in my esteem.
Hmm.
Whereas I don't know if Fincher has had um, the same kind of backlash from his talent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that and the just his ability to tell a solid narrative without 100 takes for every shot. I think it has that
He
there has to be
does do
something
a
to
lot
that.
of takes. He does do a lot of takes. So I don't think
And,
he does the Kubrick number, but I have heard Fincher does a lot of takes.
how often does he go over budget?
I don't think he ever goes over budget. I mean, he's a
But he,
responsible filmmaker from what I understand, but he is a perfectionist. Like he made Jake Gyllenhaal throw like some paperwork on a seat like 70 times, like once for Zodiac. Like so he does have his little he does do that from time to time. He
well, I think in the same way that we have to give Kubrick, some leeway because of how great his films were. I think then I know it sounds like I'm kind of waffling on this, but Fincher, he has to be forgiven because his films, the
absolutely.
films have
Absolutely.
just so good.
He can get as many takes as he effing wants because he's David frickin' Fincher.
Yeah,
So,
that's excellent, excellent.
all right, moving on to number two. Again, any other filmmaker and any other, I mean, some days of the week it might even be my number one, but I mean, it's a classic movie, Fight Club. I
Yeah,
adore Fight Club. What can again, you brought up earlier about how your anger as a young man, his movies really spoke to you as your anger. This is the ultimate angry young man's movie. I mean, that's
yeah, it
what
really
Fight
is.
Club is. If you're a child of divorce, if you're working a job that you don't like, if your dreams aren't coming true the way that you thought they were going to back in high school, if you're just drifting through life like Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, then Fight Club is the movie for you. I mean,
Yeah,
it is the ultimate angry young man's movie, and
yeah,
it's a brilliant satire. It's a brilliant dark comedy. It knows what it is. It's not just being whiny. Damn it definitely satirizes corporate America, and it definitely
yeah,
doesn't love corporate America, but it's just as equally satirizing the hatred of corporate America as it is corporate America. You know what I'm saying? It's like
yeah,
it's got an understanding of itself. It knows how
yeah,
ridiculous it is. It knows in some ways how whiny it is, and it takes that and it raises it a level and it examines it through the microscope of satire.
yeah,
And it's just a crazy movie. And it's a brilliant movie. It's got one of the best endings ever. It just the way the Pixies kicks in at the very end with the buildings exploding.
yeah,
It's just an all around great movie. It is a near perfect, if not perfect movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
It, in every way, it really is a near perfect movie. So you mentioned the soundtrack by the Dust Brothers,
Yes, the Dust
and then
Brothers. Thank you for bringing up the Dust Brothers. They're amazing.
yeah,
That soundtrack is amazing.
yeah, that sound yeah, the it's so good. It, Where is my mind by the Pixies at the
Yes.
end, like you said. Uh, I it is the There are only two movies that I have um, that I saw and then immediately walked right back in and saw it again.
Oh wow.
And so what the one of them is L.A. Confidential,
Uh huh.
and the other is uh, Fight Club.
Good for you, man.
I
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw it a few
I
times in theaters when when I was still going to theaters a lot. When I was still seeing movies multiple times, I did go see it a few times,
Yeah.
at least three. But I didn't go. I've never turned around and gone to see a movie right after seeing it.
Yeah, it's I had to. It was I was living in LA at the time, and I walked right back in, and I was like, man, this movie's special. And uh, I had uh, I I read the book, and like I remember I was reading the book in this Chinese restaurant near
Hmm.
my house, and and this stranger, who looked like he could have been, who might have just walked off the set of Fight Club. He came up to me and he said, that's real. That book, that's about, that's what really happens. There's actually a real Fight Club in Seattle. Like and like we have, and we're trying to start one down here, and it's like just like maybe you should come, man. Maybe just like
You were like, no.
nope, no, thank you. No,
In
no, nothing for me.
Chicago, I knew people who tried to start a fight club.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's just like
a lot of people tried to make it real. I mean, to me, I don't blame the movie for that. I think you're
yeah,
not getting the frickin' joke if you're starting your own fight club after seeing
yeah,
that movie. You're not
yeah,
getting the movie is not glamorizing this kind of behavior. It maybe does
yeah.
at first, but then towards the end, like I said, it knows how ridiculous this behavior is.
I think
That's what makes it so great.
yeah, the humor is the the humor is kind of subtle in that it it introduces like a homoerotic element in
Yeah.
it, and uh and that's, if you don't pick up on that, then you may think that that the filmmakers are trying to glamorize the Fight Club lifestyle, and by
Right.
how cut, the male, the conventional male
Mm.
ideal that Brad Pitt
Yeah.
exudes in that
Yeah.
film. If you're not a savvy uh uh, consumer of media, you might think that it's for real, and that they're
But the
trying to.
movie is criticizing that very
Yeah,
thing that people romanticized about it, and that's what.
yeah,
And that,
exactly.
I mean, it's
Exactly.
kind of a lot of people. The Americans have trouble understanding satire because one of my
Yeah,
favorite movies is Natural Born Killers, and that movie influenced countless people to hurt other, or not countless, but several. There were several
yeah,
instances of people hurting other people inspired by that movie or killing other people.
yeah,
But in Fight Club, those are two movies that kind of deserve to be mentioned together because get people just aren't getting the joke. They aren't getting the
yeah,
commentary that they're providing. And
yeah.
it's like that makes me
It's
sad because I feel like Fight Club was pretty explicit. I feel like
yeah.
Fight Club made its point pretty clearly by the end. Uh
I did too. The fact that he tried to that he risked killing himself to end his relationship with Tyler Durden, even
yeah.
though I think that that if you pay attention to the narrative, you realize um, that none of the characters really existed. They were all just figments of his own imagination as he was coping with his own uh, uh, possible diagnosis of testicular cancer.
Now
You
see,
know,
I wow. That is an interpretation I have never had on this movie
yeah.
before. I have never had that. I
He
think
there's there's so many different fan theories
yeah.
that he was struggling with
Yeah.
sexuality and not able to come to terms with that both Marla and Tyler Durden were fictional characters. That
Interesting. See, I choose not to believe that Marla's fictional because I like that romantic angle with
yeah,
that kind of not tragic romance, but what am I trying to think of? Sick romance, but not quite that.
yeah.
Whatever, you know what I'm trying to say.
And
There was a cool kind of grungy '90s romantic vibe to them,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I liked that aspect of the movie. But I don't want her to be fake. I don't want her to be
What's that actress's name? Her name is
Helena Bonham Carter.
Helen Margaret. She is a fan. She was so great in that.
Yes, she is.
And the she added a fantastic element to that film that uh, it without it, it would have just been it. You would have thought that it was a misogynistic piece
Hmm.
if she hadn't been in it. But
Right.
she brought such strength to that character that that it's. I mean, I that it really isn't. Um, it isn't a film that hates women. It's the
No.
characters hate women because they don't understand
Right.
themselves,
Right. Right.
and uh,
I
I
wouldn't
think
say
that
that Edward Norton's character hates women. I just think he's scared of them.
yeah,
And it's his fear of Marla that partially creates Tyler Durden in the first place.
he uh, I think that he oh I think that his insomnia created uh, a nightmare universe that he only barely knew how to survive.
Right.
And if not for Marla, he would have possibly done much worse things. And that I
Possibly,
think
but his I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe that he even says in the voiceover that Tyler existing has something to do with Marla. I think his Tyler kind of came into being so that he could have the courage to go after Marla. And
yeah
that's how I interpreted it, was that so
yeah
then she's not only the thing that created Tyler, maybe she's the thing that saves him from Tyler too. So I don't know.
I think that that was one of my interpretations when and that has been one of my that he created Tyler so that he could have a relationship with Marla.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is one of the kindest interpretations of that film.
sure. And
I think
I think that movie has a pretty soft heart in its center. As
yeah
cynical and ugly and nihilistic as it is,
yeah
I think it's got heart in the end, and that's part of the reason I love that movie so freaking
oh
much,
yeah
because it
oh
does have
yeah.
heart.
Edward Norton could he can play villains.
Sure,
He could have made that character evil if he wanted to.
sure.
Um, you know
I love how he
he
played it though.
oh yeah totally. Um, uh, what what I it, to circle back to your comment about satire, I the great danger of satire is that it can be misinterpreted and misused by bad faith actors,
Sure.
such as like
Satire
Verhoeven's.
Satire in my, and I think I'm going to say what you're thinking. Satire can become just as bad as what it's satirizing.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It can become a tool of the subject. The intended. It can become a tool of the intended subject.
Yeah.
So, like with
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's exactly what
yeah,
I was trying to say. Yes. It can become
like
a tool of the intended subject. That's a good way to put it.
with like another example of that would be Verhoeven's Starship Troopers, which is a total satirical
Hmm.
approach to a sci-fi fascistic, you know, government,
Hmm.
and it is it's meant to satirize the that kind of militaristic thinking,
Hmm.
and what it does instead is it becomes a propaganda piece for would-be fascists, you know.
I'm gonna save that for another podcast because
Okay.
but I disagree with you on Verhoeven and Star Trek. I'm a huge Verhoeven fan and I'm a huge Starship Troopers fan, and I think I disagree, but I get what you're saying, and I think it's a good example. I just disagree with that particular movie.
I I don't dislike Starship Troopers. It's a great movie.
Yeah,
I think it does a better job of satirizing that kind of thinking than the book did.
yeah.
But
I
that
thought
having been
I
said,
wouldn't know.
it became it's a great book. It's a
Okay.
classic. But but um but it's still, I think that that there's a reason why Casper Van Dien is in all those damn sequels,
Yeah.
and Verhoeven didn't have anything to do with it.
Right. Right.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
Now, but yeah, that's pretty much. I dislike how so many incels have based their entire personalities on Fight Club.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
it's
Missed the point. You're missing the point.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. We're at number one, and that's the only one remaining. I watch this movie multiple times a year, and I have since it came out about 10 years ago now. I fall asleep to this movie sometimes. I just get on a kick with it. I consider this to be a perfect movie. It's it's Gone Girl. I think that it's got Ben Affleck's best performance, which who I like Ben Affleck. A lot of people don't like him. I think he's a very likable on screen presence. Rosamund Pike is amazing. It's just I just it moves at a completely even pace throughout. Again, it's a movie that's closer to 3 hours than it is to 2 hours. Uh, it's I watch this movie and amazing. I get sucked into this movie like Zodiac, like Fight Club. It just puts me in this trance where nothing else matters, and it's got Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's wonderful score. It's just again, it's a mesmerizing cinematic experience. It gets me every time. So, if I haven't watched it for 6 to 8 months or something, I'll be like, I'll put on Gone Girl. I'm done. It's like saying you're gonna go out for the evening and you smoke a joint and then I'm done. You don't go anywhere. If I put on Gone Girl, I don't go anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I think I consider it to be a perfect movie. I think Fincher is just this amazing choice to have directed it. He's not. I don't. You read the book, and I've listened to the book on audio tape. He's not the likeliest choice to direct it, but I can't imagine anybody else delivering as perfect of a movie. It just blows me away. I'm at a loss for words. I just think it's a wonderful movie. In the 10 years it's come out, I've probably watched it. I'm gosh 30 times, and
wow.
it gets me. And it's a satire too. It's a satire on modern day on the way people treat modern day marriage. And it's hard. I think I view this film as a satire of people not taking their marriage seriously or people taking their marriage too seriously. It's a satire of modern day marriage, and yeah, yeah. And I just I yeah. How do you feel?
It's Rosamund Pike is great in it.
Yeah.
Uh, it's probably Ben Affleck's greatest performance in my
Yes.
opinion. Um, I what I liked about it was you had no idea what was going on. Every time you thought you had it figured out, it's like no, no, flipped it on its head.
Yeah.
No, you're wrong. No, and even at the end of the movie, you still really don't know what's going on
No. No.
because nobody nobody's version of the truth was fully represented,
Right.
and it's they every time you thought you were on the side of the good guy, the person who had the right way of things. The rug was pulled out from under you, and here's your new reality. And
Yeah.
it's it's a it's not the easiest film to watch of his, but it is a but as far as suspense goes, it just, I mean, with the unlikeliest of stories, it really just keeps you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
And
I've seen it so many times and I still get mesmerized by it. It still keeps me on the edge of my seat.
yeah,
I just
yeah, like you said, it's just masterful filmmaking.
Yeah, it really is. I think it's Fincher at his best. And it's not, it doesn't like his filmmaking in Fight Club is the most noticeable.
Yeah,
His filmmaking in Gone Girl is the most refined. It's
yeah,
just
it's very mature.
It's very
It,
mature piece of filmmaking, and it's
yeah, like
yeah.
yeah, to go from
I'm not
uh,
verbalizing myself well with this, but I just think I
I
words cannot describe how amazing I find this movie to be.
I understand that when you've loved something to death, the the fabric just becomes thin in your hands,
Yeah.
and you only have the memory of what it was. Yeah, it's um, it the I think I would enjoy it more if it had uh, someone other than Ben Affleck. But that having been said, it's still
I like
really
Ben
really
Affleck.
good.
I do.
He's I hate on Ben Affleck more than I should probably because
Yeah.
he is a very talented man. He's very talented, and he brings you know he is very tall, very solidly built. He's not an idiot. So what do I dislike about him? It's uh, it's an undefinable characteristic that uh, that for some reason I just don't find charismatic, and
just
that's
just for
unfair to
whatever
him.
reason you just don't like him.
Yeah, it's
And that's
unfair
fine.
to him because
I
I
have that feeling towards many actors.
yeah and I have that feeling towards very few actors because um I really try hard to find the best
Sure.
in but for some reason I respect his talent. I probably if he on a personal level I probably would like him very much because he's a comic book geek like me,
Yeah.
and um and he is someone who tries hard to do their best, and I how can you not appreciate that in a person?
Sure.
But I this really this isn't about our conversation here isn't about the qualities or foibles of Ben Affleck. It's about how great Fincher
Yeah.
is as a director, and despite my dislike of Ben Affleck, it's still just a phenomenal
It
film.
really is. It really
Yeah,
is. It really is.
yeah,
All right.
and I think that for me to meditate on any other actor in that role would do the film disservice.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think
I think Ben
he
Affleck, I think the weight and the God, what's the word I'm looking for? What he
gravitas.
gravitas, no, the baggage that he brings to his role from his public persona
Oh
works for this character really well.
yeah,
Uh,
for better or worse, I think he breaking up with Jennifer Garner at the
I
time,
don't
or
remember. I don't think
it,
so yet.
it does.
He just has, he's just one of those actors, just, and I don't think it was anything going on at the time, just the baggage that he himself brings to every role
Yeah,
he does. He brings a lot of baggage to his roles. He didn't shy away from the limelight when he was younger. He dated a lot of reputable women, or reputable, a lot of famous women, a lot of,
uh-huh.
yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
And destroyed their
And destroyed
reputations.
their reputations. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Um, yeah, he did. And when you're a big, handsome fella, why wouldn't you? You
Sure.
know,
No,
when
again, I like Ben Affleck, and I think he's
yeah,
a phenomenal director. But again, we're talking about Fincher, not Affleck. So,
yeah,
uh,
yeah. Well, Rosamund Pike, I think that's really the she is phenomenal. She
this is a
really,
performance. She should have been nominated for an Oscar for this.
yeah. I mean,
Or was she? Was she?
she might have been. Uh,
But I think it's a phenomenal.
I think it's one of her best roles ever, for sure.
I mean, I haven't seen her in a lot of things.
Uh, let's see here.
But she was nominated for Gone Girl. She was nominated for Gone Girl. Good for her.
Okay.
Good. She deserved it. I was getting up on my soapbox saying she deserved to be nominated, and she had
Yeah.
to. So, all right,
Yeah.
well, that about does it. Thank you very much. I think. Do you have any final thoughts, Luke?
No, David Fincher, make a video game.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good. And do a sci-fi movie other than Alien 3.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. And thank you, Matt.
Thank you.